Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Emil Robinson Smith will be performing our commentary for the duration of this coverage. We are broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Hope you've all had a good week so far. Happy Friday to everyone, and welcome into our live coverage of the CERT-2 mission for United Launch Alliance, the second time ULA is sending up a Vulcan rocket set to lift off from Space Launch Complex 41, or SLIC 41, over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Our Stephen Young is running the technical operations of this broadcast. Our photographer Adam Bernstein out preparing to shoot this Vulcan rocket from multiple angles, as well as track it for us once it leaves the pad. Our Michael Kane has the morning off, but if you'd like to follow the fellows on social media, you can find them over on X. Adam is at ABurnNYC, Michael Kane at MT Kane Jr. While you're over there, be sure to follow Spaceflight Now, simply at Spaceflight Now. If you yourself don't happen to be on X, you can also find us on Facebook as well as Threads. We'll be joined a little bit later in the broadcast by our friends Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions, as well as Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images, who are over on the Cape side of things, preparing to bring us our eyes on the rocket from that vantage point. As you can see from the countdown clock, a little bit different, of course, from our more common Falcon 9 missions that we see here lifting off from Florida's Space Coast. A Vulcan rocket, or an Atlas in other ULA cases, will use a combination of the L- and the T- clock. The L- time is the continuously moving time to liftoff. The T- clock has a couple of planned holds in it, so we are currently T-7 minutes and counting. This is a planned final hold for United Launch Alliance as it goes through the final checkouts of the Vulcan rocket. This hold's set to last for 60 minutes in total. So far, it's been a smooth countdown of the Vulcan rocket this morning. No hiccups to speak of. Reminiscent of the CERT-1 launch that we saw earlier this year, back in January, which lifted off from this same pad, SLIC 41. On board the CERT-1 mission, though, was the Peregrine Lunar Lander, a robotic lander that was designed to go to the moon from Pittsburgh-based company Astrobotic. However, for those who may recall that mission, it unfortunately ran into some issues with its thrusters and was not able to reach the moon and become the first commercial lander. That designation ultimately went to Houston-based Intuitive Machines. This CERT-2 mission, though, also has undergone some changes. It originally was set to fly Sierra Space's Dream Chaser spaceplane and fly in a configuration that would feature a couple more solid rocket boosters at the base of the Vulcan rocket. Taking a look at a photo shared by Sierra Space, you can see the Dream Chaser spaceplane on the right-hand side of your screen. Its Shooting Star cargo module on the left. Unfortunately, Sierra Space was not able to get this its vehicle ready in time for the CERT-2 mission. Tori Bruno said they waited as long as they possibly could have in order to have this as the payload, but in Tori Bruno's words, they were just a little bit too late and then needed to get through this certification mission so that they can move on to launch national security payloads. As a requirement by the U.S. Space Force, new rocket has a couple of options for how to get certified for launching national security missions, the option that ULA chose was to really keep its Space Force partners in the loop throughout the development of the Vulcan rocket, and so they just need to fly 2 certification flights to prove out the capabilities of the Vulcan rocket. Cert 1 is already in the books, and ULA is looking for, hopefully, a nominal flight of Cert 2. Just a couple other notes on Dream Chaser to let you know what the progress of that vehicle is. Late last month, they did a test to make sure that the shooting star module, which you can see in this image on the left-hand side of your screen, is able to correctly align and in the future dock to the port on the Harmony module of the International Space Station. So what you see sort of suspended in between those 2 technicians is a mock-up of the interface ring that's seen at the docking port on the ISS. And they went through some of those tests and checkouts to confirm that all was well there. About a month ago from where we are today, they went through an acoustic test of that shooting star module. It's a series of speaker systems that you see surrounding the module in the center of your screen just beyond that lift. Essentially what they were doing is putting the cargo module through a series of intense vibrations to make sure that it would be able to withstand a launch atop the Vulcan rocket under a nominal launch scenario. So that's the 411 on the Dream Chaser vehicle. TBD at this point exactly when it will launch. Tory Bruno said that they will have room in their 2025 manifest for this mission. Of course, it will depend, the timing that is, on A, when Dream Chaser itself is ready, and B, when the International Space Station schedule is open and available to support this launch to the ISS. Before we go any further with talking about the Vulcan itself, I want to thank the little more than 520 of you who are joining with us live this morning. I know it's an early hour on a Friday morning. We certainly appreciate you being with us. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button. Allow some more folks to find their way into our live launch coverage as we continue on. Also want to thank our wonderful moderators in the live chat, Callistia Lee, working hard to help keep things kosher in the live chat. So be sure to give her a good hello and a happy Friday. We're also powered by a wonderful channel member community here on YouTube. So thanks to folks like Justin Dawson, Sulfur for Lunch, KH, Well Reasoned, or Super Hot Karen F, and many others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, shop.spaceflightnow.com, access to our member-only videos here on YouTube, and of course the ability to watch our launch liftoff moments in 4K. And good morning to a couple of folks. Ray M, hello, hello. Patty Chichil and Dime Lita. Good morning to you all. Last but not least, if you have a comment or question about this launch or other happenings in space, and your comment or question is appropriate to be read on the show, you can use the YouTube Super Chat feature. And not only will you be giving us some interesting things to talk about as we continue on through the countdown of this mission, but you'll be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now, and that is always very much appreciated. Kicking us off, our thanks to Callistia Lee for gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships to our newest 5 channel members. Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. Be sure to thank Callistia in the live chat if you haven't already. And a thanks to Space Q for a $2 super chat, noting that it is very much spooky season for launches. And what a season it is. Of course, after the launch of the Vulcan rocket, assuming everything is on track to return the Falcon family of vehicles to flight in the next few days, there is the upcoming launch of the Hera mission from the European Space Agency. It's the follow-along to NASA's Double Asteroid Redirection Test, or DART, mission that launched back in 2022, struck the binary asteroid system of Didymos and Dimorphos, changing the orbital period of Dimorphos around Didymos by about 33-ish minutes. And so the Hera mission is going to go back to Dimorphos and Didymos, deploy a couple of CubeSats, and study the impacts much more closely of the DART mission, as well as get some more robust data on binary asteroids, how they form, materials they're made of, so on and so forth. That mission's set to lift off from Space Launch Complex 40, again assuming FAA and SpaceX are able to get the Falcon 9 back in launch order. Mission looking to lift off Monday morning, October 7th. And assuming that goes well, that'll be followed up on the 10th, no earlier than, for the launch of a Falcon Heavy rocket, lifting off from Launch Complex 39A, supporting the Europa Clipper mission. It's a big mission for NASA heading out to the ocean moon of Jupiter. Looking a little further into the future, there's also the CRS-31, or Commercial Resupply Services 31 mission to the International Space Station. That'll be taking off, sending up a Cargo Dragon spacecraft with a whole host of science and supplies up to the International Space Station to support the work of the crew of Expedition 72. So lots happening in October and for the rest of the year. Coming back to this mission, though, and what it'll mean for ULA, this is set to be the final certification flight, if all goes well, before they're able to start launching national security payloads, an important part of the ULA launch manifest. Within the second phase of the national security space launch contract, ULA was awarded 25 launches using its Vulcan rocket. First one up is called USSF 106. That'll be followed by USSF 87. According to Tori Bruno, ULA president and CEO, both missions are on tap to launch this year, assuming a clean flight of the CERT-2 mission. Some of you may recall that once upon a time, Amazon's Project Kuiper was set to launch on an Atlas V rocket this year. However, because of the schedule for those two national security missions and the timing of everything, the Kuiper mission is set to launch early next year. Don't have a firm date on that, but that will be coming down the pike fairly soon. Kuiper, of course, said to be a challenger to other satellite internet constellations, primarily SpaceX's Starlink constellation. Currently L minus 44 minutes, 44 seconds. Again, we're still T minus 7 minutes and holding. For those of you who may just be joining us, this is a planned 60-minute hold as part of the final checkouts of the Vulcan vehicle before it's ready to fly in about 3/4 of an hour from now. ULA does have a 3-hour launch window today, but all indications suggest they are remaining on track for that on-time liftoff at the start of that, coming up right at 6 o'clock on the dot. If so, this would be rinse and repeat, essentially, of the CERT-1 mission as far as the countdown is concerned. They were able to lift off right at the start of that launch window as well. The rocket flying today also basically a wash, rinse, repeat of the CERT-1 mission, minus, of course, the customer logo on top of the payload fairings. Take a look at your screen here. This is how ULA is writing out the designation of a Vulcan rocket. It'll always start with VC for Vulcan Centaur. The 2 is the number of solid rocket boosters manufactured by Northrop Grumman. In this case, there are 2 of them on board. The Centaur can fly with 0, 2, 4, or 6 solids strapped beneath it. Or strapped along the side of the booster, I should say. As an example of when they would need 6 solids, that'll be when they're launching, for example, missions for Amazon's Project Kuiper, when they will need the full might of the Vulcan rocket and those 6 solids. The S stands for the payload fairing length. ULA has a couple of options when it comes to its Vulcan fairings. Let's take a look at those here. In this case, they're flying, it's called the standard payload fairing. This one is 15.5 meters, or about 51 feet. The long fairing, 70 feet in length, or 21.3 meters. Both have the same width, about 5.4 meters or 17.7 feet in diameter. And as you can see in the box on the right, they can fly a couple of different configurations as far as the payload on board. However, because the Dream Chaser spaceplane was not ready in time for this mission, and ULA President and CEO Tori Bruno said they did wait as long as they possibly could. Waiting does have knock-on effects, though, as they waited long enough to the point where ULA was not able to have the amount of time needed to manifest a different payload, even though there were some customers who were interested in potentially flying this CERT-2 mission. ULA was focused on giving Dream Chaser as much time as was available before they really had to pull the trigger and shift things over away from Dream Chaser. And so they're flying what's being referred to as an inert payload, essentially one that will remain attached to the Centaur upper stage and has a host of instrumentation on board. Those are designated to gather data about the Centaur upper stage, which will be flying for the second time here. You can see the Centaur 5 in the graphic on the right-hand side of your screen as compared to the Centaur 3, which has been flying and still is flying, of course, on the Atlas family of rockets. Centaur 5 is designed to be able to operate for up to 12 hours in its current configuration. However, in conversations with the press on Wednesday, Tori Bruno mentioned that the goal is to be able to extend the capability of Centaur out to multiple days, eventually weeks, and potentially even months of operability on orbit. And so there's a whole host of things that ULA is working on behind the scenes. Bruno would call it their secret sauce, so not willing to disclose a whole lot of detail about that right now, but said that as they continue to fly their Vulcan fleet, more will be disclosed as the missions progress. We're now L minus 38 minutes, 54 seconds and counting. Again, still within the T minus 7 minute time frame here. For those who like to watch the waters in Port Canaveral here, you'll know there have been a couple of trips of ULA's rocket ship, the barge that they use to transport hardware from their factory up in Decatur, Alabama. It's across the river from Huntsville. For those who know the area, it's within the Tennessee Valley region of the north end of the state of Alabama, just south of the Tennessee state line. The rocket ship goes back and forth between Decatur and the Cape to offload materials, and it's made a couple of trips. So the rocket components for the next flight, and the next two flights, I should say, of the Vulcan rocket, USSF 106 and USSF 87, they're down here at the Cape, and USSF 106 is built out completely and ready to go. It's just waiting on the payloads. So as soon as this Vulcan rocket is off the pad and we're done and dusted with the CERT-2 mission, ULA can move fairly quickly into getting stacking underway and progressing towards their first fully certified flight of Vulcan. The most recent time that ULA launched was back over the summer. That was another national security mission, and in fact, the final of the Atlas V rocket supporting a national security payload. Ahead of the USSF 51 mission, which originally was going to be the first flight of a certified Vulcan rocket, but in order to get that capability on orbit, they decided years ago to shift that mission from a Vulcan launch to an Atlas. And during the rollout process of that Atlas rocket out to the pad you see here on your screen, Slick 41, we had the opportunity to talk with Colonel James Horn about the upcoming CERT-2 launch. So again, this soundbite you're about to hear is back from the July time frame, so slightly dated in the exact timing of what he said, but the content of his comments still relevant and germane to the certification process, which is why we're about to play it. That'll be followed up by comments from this week from ULA President and CEO Tory Bruno about the timing of the certification process as it exists now. So let's go ahead and listen. First, you'll hear from Colonel James Horn, and then from ULA President and CEO Tory Bruno.
So we're in the final phases of our certification. ULA is completing their final qualification tests, which are going well. And we're postured to be complete and waiting on data from this next certification flight, and then ready for our first national security Vulcan mission in the October timeframe. So things are progressing well. We've had a lot of good reviews. We've overcome some major obstacles, and we're excited to get going this year.
No, you don't have to be certified before you start all of the activities that are involved in getting a payload ready and planning its mission and integrating it. So that work is already underway. We just can't fly it until we're certified, And I would say my customer would be reluctant to physically integrate it to the rocket, stick it on the rocket until that is done either. So that's in work. What is involved in actually doing the certification itself is, of course, flying the rocket, collecting the data. We then package all the data up and perform our own analysis of that data. And we've already agreed ahead of time, not only in the certification plan, but approaching the mission, what that will look like when we hand it to the government. Then we hand it to the government, and then they do their own analysis of that data and their own evaluation. They compare it to ours, but it's an independent evaluation, which is important because, you know, we would have a conflict of interest, I think, if we were allowed to just do that ourselves. They're not going to take our word for it. They're going to do their own work. If the mission is very clean, like the CERT 1 mission, that goes pretty quickly. I mean, that'll be done in weeks, not months. And the details of how they do it and what they do in their timeline wouldn't be right for me to say. You're more than welcome to ask them, and I'm sure they would describe what they go through. But yeah, there is, it doesn't take very long, as I said. As long as it's a very clean mission, it's a short number of weeks to get it all done, and then they would tell us, you are certified, and you are now able to fly these missions, and the program office that actually conduct the missions would no doubt feel empowered to proceed on into the physical integration. All the things they do to a spacecraft that they only do when they know they're going to fly soon, like fueling the spacecraft and certain testing they do, all of that gets done and away they go.
And again, those were Colonel James Horn and ULA President and CEO Tori Bruno. We're now at L minus 31 minutes, 44 seconds and counting. Again, still within the T minus 7 minute, 60-minute hold. Planned final hold for this CERT 2 launch. Taking a look at our live chat here, want to first thank the now more than 1,200 of you who are joining us with our live coverage this morning. If you haven't already, we'd certainly appreciate it if you could hit that like button for us, allow some more folks to find their way on into our live coverage today. Also want to thank a few individuals for their support. Our thanks to Ian James for our $5 super chat. Thank you, Ian, who says, thank you to the crew of Spaceflight Now and Will for the great coverage. Appreciate your support of the coverage, Ian. One of our wonderful moderators, Aussie Space Girl, is marking 19 months as a channel member with us. Says, "G'day, Will," from Stephanie B. and Kelly. G'day to you both. Maya Rose Akanasferu. Apologies, Maya, if I completely botched your last name there. But appreciate the $2 super chat asking if this rocket is going to make its moves at 6 o'clock. All indications right now are that ULA is still on track for an on-time departure at 6 a.m. So barring any last-minute technical hiccups, we should see a liftoff of Vulcan coming up here at 6 a.m. Eastern. That is 1000 UTC. And lastly, for now, I want to thank Psychonaut69 for A, gifting a Spaceflight Now membership, and then B, joining us at the launch director level channel membership. Really appreciate that, Psychonaut. Glad to have you aboard and appreciate your continuous support of what we do here at Spaceflight Now. Currently L minus 29 minutes, 25 seconds and counting. I mentioned that Vulcan has a number of missions that are already booked on board coming up in the future. Let's talk a little bit about what they've got on the table. The primary customer that has been announced so far is Amazon, who purchased 38 flights on Vulcan rockets to launch its Project Kuiper internet satellites. If you recall, ULA launched what was called the Protoflight 2 mission, or the Protoflight mission, which sent up two, as the name suggests, prototype Kuiper satellites to check out not only the on-orbit capabilities of those, but also the ground systems and commercial terminals that'll be used in order to actually access the internet service for customers on the ground. Those tests appeared to go well, and now they're in the process of getting their production satellites up and running and processed so that they can start launching those. They'll begin flying them with the Atlas V rocket first. They still have a good number of those missions left on the table. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But once they've flown out all of their Atlas V rockets that they've booked, then they will turn to these Kuiper satellite launches on Vulcan. The U.S. Space Force and the National Reconnaissance Office also very eager to see Vulcan certified and ready to support their missions. There are 25 of these National Security Space Launch, or NSSL, Phase 2 missions that are booked as of now. And as we speak, and throughout the course of this past year, the Phase 3 contract has been going through its competitive stage. ULA and SpaceX were the two companies selected in a 60-40 split, respectively, to launch the Phase 2 missions. Phase 3 are under award and consideration right now, and we should be getting an announcement before the year is out on who's getting what split, and perhaps when that announcement comes, we'll get our first couple of named missions to boot. Finally, on Vulcan, as far as we know, there are also 6 missions with the Dream Chaser space plane. That's beyond the certification flight, or the first demonstration flight. And during his comments on Wednesday, Torrey Bruno alluded to an unknown customer that, to my knowledge, and in the live chat, if you've heard some rumblings, love to hear your thoughts on this, but he did tease another customer, a commercial customer, for the Vulcan rocket, but said he'll leave that to them when they want to make that announcement. So keep your eyes peeled for upcoming Vulcan flights from new players that have not yet been widely named. Of course, the Vulcan rocket is designed to replace both the Delta IV and the Atlas V rockets. Earlier this year with the NROL-70 mission, we did see the retirement of the Delta IV Heavy rocket, which made its last flight from Space Launch Complex 37. That pad will be vacated by ULA, and SpaceX is interested in picking it up as an asset to launch its Starship rocket. Currently, there's still an environmental assessment being done, headed by the U.S. Air Force, assessing the viability for Starship to take over Slick 37. So that is still in work. Likely won't hear a lot more on that before start of next year. Meanwhile, there are still a good number of Atlas V launches left to go. As I mentioned, the final National Security Atlas mission did launch earlier this year as well. That was USSF 51. That said, there are about 15 Atlases, well, not about, there are 15 Atlases left on the books. 8 of those are for Amazon's Project Kuiper. Now that the crew flight test of Boeing Starliner spacecraft is in the rearview mirror, there are 6 full crew rotation flights of Starliner left remaining to fly to the International Space Station as per their contract. And Viasat has their Viasat 3 satellite. If you recall, one of those did launch on a Vulcan Heavy rocket. They've got another Viasat 3 coming up on a future Vulcan mission. Or, excuse me, a future Atlas V mission. We're now L minus 23 minutes, 26 seconds and counting. T minus 7 minutes and holding. For those of you who may just be joining us, good morning. Welcome into our live launch coverage of the second certification flight of ULA's Vulcan rocket. I'm Will Robinson Smith, reporter for Spaceflight Now, performing the commentary duties for our live coverage today. So far, it has been a smooth and quiet countdown. As we continue on with the countdown, I want to thank a couple more folks for your support today. Our thanks to Grant Greenwell for $2 super chats, and good luck from Cricket and Mads. Thanks to you both. Inside Steve's Head with the $2 super chat. Appreciate that. Butterfly's been a member with us for 9 months, saying hello, Space Buddies. I've enjoyed another month of launches with you. Hope we've enjoyed having you with us, Butterfly. Grant Greenwell with a $10 super chat, popping back in, saying, Mads and Cricket, wishing you a great launch before school, watching from the beach. And yes, to all of our school-aged viewers who are joining with us, glad we have a mission for you before you have to hopefully head off to school, and hope you have a wonderful and productive day. I know with the weekend right around the corner, it can sometimes be a little hard to focus, but hope it's a good Friday for you. Get some fun lessons in there. And if you do have a 0 period, hopefully you still have time to catch this launch in full before you have to really start focusing on your schoolwork. Moderator Callistia Lee with a $10 super chat. Thank you, Callistia. It says, and I'll echo, please show the Spaceflight Now team some love and support by clicking the like button. They work hard to bring these live streams to us. And yes, if you haven't already while you're here, be sure to hit that like hit that like button. Allow some folks to find their way into this live coverage in the less than 20 minutes now remaining. Inside Steve's Head back with another $2 super chat saying, greetings from Northeast Ohio. Let's go. Grant Greenwell, finally for now, with a $2 super chat saying, Florida babies, Mads and Cricket. Thank you, Spaceflight Now. L minus 18 minutes, 21 seconds counting. Still within the planned T minus 7-minute hold, lasting 60 minutes in total. Taking a look from some of the cameras from the ULA broadcast here. Again, this is the second of 2 planned holds that has occurred throughout this countdown so far. Just heard from ULA that they are working no issues at this current time and are still proceeding towards a on-time liftoff coming up at 6 a.m. We are currently L minus 16 minutes, 26 seconds and counting. Have less than 10 minutes remaining in the hold today. Currently L minus 14 minutes, 7 seconds and counting. Still within the last several minutes of the planned hold at T minus 7 minutes. we do have an update for you. They are working a technical issue that we're just listening to on the loops. They are not ready to proceed into the terminal count, and they are working a new T0 time. So again, for those who are just joining us, we are working on getting some more information, listening in for the latest updates. However, there is a technical issue that has come up, and ULA says that they are not in a position to proceed into the terminal count as of right now.
To our south. The little bit of activity we have up across to our east over the Atlantic Ocean remains a little too shallow and a little too far to our east to be a concern here over the next couple minutes. Our main area of concern here is within this white ring, which represents 10 nautical miles. So if we go here and take a look at our forecast here, we're going to only be looking at a POV of down to just 5% with no significant launch weather concerns tracking. Winds are going to remain from the east, this light breeze about 10 to 15 knots, with temperatures around 80 degrees this morning. Weather looks great for the launch. And back to you, Andrea.
And just a quick update from Launch Weather Officer Arlene Moses. The forecast heading into this countdown was good, about 80% favorable for liftoff, and you just heard from her there. Taking a look at the Vulcan rocket from just beside the engine section there, those two BE-4 engines set to power a Vulcan rocket for just the second time. Of course, the BE-4s will also be used on New Glenn, the forthcoming rocket from Blue Origin. Again, as far as the technical issue, they are so the two things that are being worked right now is we're still holding before the resumption of the terminal count. This is an extension of the planned hold, so we are now into a teams are working a data issue of some sort. And there's also a temperature issue that came up. Time is currently 5:55 on the East Coast. Approaching 1000 UTC. For those of you who are just joining us, and certainly appreciate the more than 3,500 of you who are with us today. Right now we are currently in a hold at T-minus 7 minutes. However, this is an extension of the planned hold, so we are in an unplanned hold at this point in time, as United Launch Alliance is working a couple of different issues that have come up. Primary driver, as we understand it, is a data issue of some sort, although there's not a lot of information on that at this moment in time, but there is also a temperature issue that was being discussed on the nets. Unclear at this point if that is a vehicle temperature issue or a ground systems temperature issue. However, what is clear is that the Vulcan will not be lifting off at the start of their 3-hour window at 6 a.m. this morning. A new T0 time has not been named, but of course we will provide that as soon as we learn it. It is now 6 o'clock here on the East Coast. This was the original planned liftoff of the Vulcan rocket on its CERT-2 mission, the second of 2 planned certification flights for the vehicle. However, at this time, ULA continues. We do have a new T0 for you now. They're targeting a liftoff at 6:30 a.m. Eastern. We are resetting our countdown clock to reflect that. For those of you who are just joining us again, watching our live coverage of the Vulcan CERT-2 mission, second and final certification flight of the Vulcan rocket, now set for a new T0 time of 6:30 a.m. Eastern. It is 10:30 UTC. As you can see on our countdown clock, we are currently L-minus 26 minutes, 32 seconds and counting. The T0 clock still remains at T-minus 7 minutes. ULA had not exited the original planned hold, which was originally designed to last an hour. Obviously going a bit longer than that. Taking a look at the live chat, want to thank a couple more folks for their support this morning. Our thanks to, excuse me, Mel Roberts Harold for $5 super chat. Saying a sleepy good morning from Chicagoland. And with another $5 super chat. Glad you're able to post and join with us, Mel. And our thanks to Psychonaut69 for gifting another 2 Spaceflight memberships. So to our 2 newest channel members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. We hope you stick around with channel membership. We're glad to have you here. We're now currently L minus 24 minutes, 7 seconds and counting, still holding at T minus 7 minutes. Call from ULA that Centaur LH2 or liquid hydrogen topping has resumed. We don't have the entire picture here. The temperature issue may have been related to the liquid hydrogen on the Centaur upper stage. The Centaur 5 is powered by a pair of engines from Aerojet Rocketdyne. They are RL-10C 1-1A engines. Together they produce about 23,825 pounds or 106 kilonewtons of thrust. They use a combination of liquid oxygen, liquid hydrogen on that stage. The booster of the Vulcan rocket, it's 109.2 feet or 33.3 meters in length, and 17.7 feet or 5.4 meters in diameter. Currently L minus 21 minutes, 56 seconds and counting. In preparation for the Vulcan Cert 2 mission coming up now in less than 22 minutes. They, of course, stacked the Vulcan rocket inside the structure you see there on the bottom left-hand corner. That is the vertical integration, or VIF-G building. They then rolled the rocket out from the VIF and on a journey of about 1/3 of a mile between that structure and the launch pad over at Slick 41. Taking a look at some of the video that we shot. This is a compilation time-lapse of some of the video as you can see the full Vulcan stack making its way on the Vulcan launch platform, or the VLP, being rolled out slowly and carefully out to the launch pad there, where you can see the crew access tower standing beside it. This will be the final time as of right now when ULA is planning to use that particular flame emblem located on the booster. currently at L-minus 17 minutes, 51 seconds and counting. Let's talk a little bit about where this Vulcan will be flying once it does leave the pad. Let's talk a little trajectory, shall we? Vulcan set to lift off from Space Launch Complex 41 or Slick 41 over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. It's going to fly in a mostly easterly direction, lifting off from the pad, heading out over the Atlantic Ocean. Tip of the hat to our editor, Stephen Young, for adding some of the annotations of where the events coming up on the timeline will be happening. Give you an idea, if you're watching the launch, about how far away the rocket actually is from Florida's Space Coast when the two solids on the side of the booster are jettisoned, where the booster engine cutoff will happen. See booster separation, of course, then the ignition of the two RL-10 engines on the second stage, and then the payload fairings will be jettisoned. Unclear if ULA is going to be showing any views of the upper stage. My guess would be probably not, since ULA has not said a lot about the details of the inert payload. It's not described visually what it looks like, so don't be shocked if we don't actually see it once the payload fairings happen. This is a time-lapse video of the wet dress rehearsal that ULA conducted on Tuesday of this week, where they run through a full dress rehearsal, including the tanking of the rocket. They go through this full timeline going down through the terminal count. However, of course, they don't ignite the engines. There's not a static fire test at the end of the WDR. Taking a look here again at those two BE-4 engines at the base of the Centaur, or excuse me, of the Vulcan booster. Those white nozzles are at the base of the two solid rocket boosters that are attached to the Vulcan main booster. ULA has received the BE-4 engines for the next two Vulcan rockets. Again, those missions are for the U.S. Space Force. Blue Origin then shifted to...
Go.
First step, 1040, launch sequencer overrides established.
Roger.
LC, PNE2.
Go.
CUC airborne pre-chill is complete. Recorded time 10:16:13 Zulu.
Recording 10:16:13 Zulu.
Good copy.
We're getting in some mission control audio through the ULA broadcast there. Those are the callouts you were just hearing.
L-minus 13 minutes.
Flight control, perform launch on time, verification.
Roger.
OSM, place SRB ignition S&A switch in the enable position.
SRB ignition enabled.
Verify the FCO, ROC, and OSM hold fire switches are in the proceed position.
Ready to proceed.
RC, verify solar radiation acceptable for launch.
Verified.
PNE-1, verify post-liftoff launch head umbilical purges configured for launch.
Verified.
LC Prop 1.
Go.
G&G Snapper Bird cycle test complete.
Roger.
LC flight control.
Go.
Launch on time verified.
Roger.
L minus 12 minutes.
RLM, verify red line monitor and event table in the correct configuration for terminal count.
Verified. LC locks 2.
Go.
Centaur LO2 at flight level.
Roger.
LC Fuel 2.
Go.
Centaur LH2 at flight level.
Roger. Terminal count briefing. If a condition exceeds a launch constraint anytime after the terminal count status check, the observer shall announce hold, hold, hold on channel 1, identify their station, and briefly state the reason for the hold.
All communications switch to channel 1. All personnel and visitors remain in present position until launch. Maintain operational silence in the LCC.
And a series of good call-outs from ULA as they're proceeding towards...
All steps complete prior to the status check. LC switch ready.
We remain in the hold as we continue towards liftoff.
We are coming upon the final pull ahead of the terminal count. Taking a look now inside the ASOC. The Advanced Spaceflight Operations Center. This is about 4 miles away from the launch pad as ULA is preparing to listen to this final terminal count. Let's listen in to this final poll.
L minus 10 minutes.
Status check to proceed with terminal count, Vulcan systems, propulsion.
Go.
Hydraulics.
Go.
Pneumatics. Go. LNG.
Go.
LO2.
Go.
Water.
Go.
Centaur systems, propulsion.
Go.
Pneumatics.
Go.
LO2.
Go.
LH2.
Go.
Gas.
Go.
Electrical systems, airborne.
Go.
Ground.
Go.
Facility.
Go.
RFFTS.
Go.
Flight control.
Go.
TCQ.
Go.
Op support.
Go.
COM.
Go.
Umbilicals.
Go.
ECS.
Go.
Redline monitor.
Go.
Quality.
Go.
Op safety manager.
Go.
ULA safety officer.
Go.
Vehicle system engineer.
Go.
Anomaly chief.
Go.
Range coordinator.
Go.
Launch director.
You have permission to launch.
Proceeding with the count. ALC, verify T0 is set for 1030 Zulu.
Verified.
Polling is
ABE, issue
complete
MRT.
and the team is go for launch. From
And we heard a good go for launch, and the pull has been completed. They are proceeding into the terminal count, which the T- clock and the L- clock will come into sync. That's coming up in now less than a minute and a half. Now less than 30 seconds to the merging of the two countdown timelines. The hold will be released. The L- clock and the T- clock will come into sync as we enter into the terminal count. Now 15 seconds from now.
On my mark, the time will be T minus 7 minutes and counting. 3, 2, 1, mark. 6:55.
The countdown.
And as you've just heard, the terminal count has begun. We are now less than 7 minutes away from just the second launch of the Vulcan rocket. This mission's set to last just about 34 minutes in total. Here's a look at an animation of the flight profile for this launch that we're going to be seeing today. About 4.9 seconds prior to liftoff, the B4s will ignite. Liftoff will be at T plus 1 minute or 1.1 seconds. The pitch yaw maneuver is T plus 7.9 seconds. That's followed by Vulcan reaching Mach 1, 1 minute and 9 seconds. Passes through max Q at T plus 1 minute 16.1 seconds. The SRB jettison, which you're seeing here on your screen, comes up at T plus 1 minute 48.8 seconds. Just before the 5-minute mark, the Vulcan booster engine will cut off. Which you should see here in just a second on this animation. There's that cutoff. Separation is at T plus 5 minutes and 5 seconds. The RL-10 ignition, which you see here, is T plus 5 minutes and 15.1 seconds. The payload fairings will be jettisoned at T plus 5 minutes and 23.1 seconds. As you see here. The first stage, or the Centaur first main engine cutoff, is T plus 55.7 seconds. The engine will reignite at T plus 30 minutes 53 seconds. It will cut off, as you see here in that animation, at T plus 34 minutes 54.6 seconds. And that will be the end of the mission coverage. Now less than 4 minutes to the planned liftoff of Vulcan on its CERT-2 mission. So we're coming into the final few minutes of the count. Want to thank the more than 6,300 of you who are joining with us live. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button for us. It'll allow more folks to find their way into our live launch coverage, and we certainly appreciate that.
This is Vulcan mission.
2 minutes and counting.
T-minus 2 minutes. The launch vehicle...
Did hear a call for a hold. We are standing by for more information on the new hold that was just announced.
51 seconds.
LC, this is flight control.
Go.
Flight control is ready to reset the clock to T-minus 7 and holding.
Roger. ALC, reset the countdown clock to T-minus 7 minutes and holding.
Roger.
LC, Peony 2.
Go, Peony 2.
Centaur, LH2 and LO2 tank venting in progress.
Roger.
LC, Peony 1.
Go.
Vulcan tank pressures are stable.
Roger.
LC, countdown clock is reset to T-minus 7 minutes and holding.
Roger.
LC, this is flight control.
Go.
Step 50 SS VAPS and active SCS in pre-flight mode.
Roger.
This is Vulcan Mission Control. The team has...
Roger. OSM, place SRB ignition SNA switch to disabled position.
SRB ignition disabled.
All stations recycle systems back to T-minus 7 and holding configuration. Hold occurred at T-minus 1 minute 51 seconds. Report status at completion. Airborne electrical LC.
Go ahead.
Transfer transmitter battery external.
Roger.
As a reminder, ULA does have a 3-hour launch window today, so while they're now a little more than 30 minutes into that time, they do have quite a bit of margin left in order to work whatever issue caused this now second unplanned hold. Unlike, say, a Falcon 9 rocket, which uses a load-and-go style of fueling, a Vulcan rocket does have the margin to hold even after fueling is well underway, as obviously evidenced by what we're seeing right here now live at Slick 41.
LC PNE1.
Go.
First step 260, substep alpha PNE1, Vulcan pneumatics pressure stable.
Roger.
LC PNE2.
Go.
Step 260, substep Foxtrot, CEC active.
Roger.
And substep Golf, Centaur pneumatic system stable.
Roger.
LC Prop 1.
Go.
First step 260, substep Delta and Echo, Vulcan propulsion and hydraulic system stable.
Roger.
LC ECS.
Go.
Step 260, substep Oscar, ECS set point stable.
Roger.
LC SYS.
Go.
Step 260, substep Mike, GC3 ready.
Roger.
LC Fuel 2.
Go.
First substep Juliet, Centaur LH2, continuing topping.
Roger.
If you're just joining with us live, time locally is 6:34 a.m. Eastern, 10:34 UTC. ULA cycled back to T-minus 7 minutes and holding as they were going through the terminal.
LC. Airborne electrical.
This LC.
Step 260, substep Papa, airborne electrical ready.
Roger.
As ULA hits T-minus 1 minute 51 seconds in the terminal count.
LC Lex 1.
Go Lex 1.
Vulcan L2, continuing topping.
Roger.
LC, this flight control.
Go flight control.
Substep Lima, flight control ready.
Roger.
LC has gas.
Go has gas.
For substep India, has gas ready.
Roger.
Time now 6:37 a.m. Eastern. We are still standing by for more information on the reason for the called hold, as well as the potential for a new T0. Again, ULA has a 3-hour...
LC Fuel 1.
Go.
Step 260, substep Charlie, Vulcan LNG, continuing topping.
Roger.
A 3-hour launch window, which lasts until 9 a.m. Eastern, that is 1300 UTC. So assuming they are able to work through whatever issue has cropped up, they do have more than enough time from an outside perspective to get through the launch today.
LCRLM.
Go.
Op 100, step 260, sub-step November, complete.
Roger.
This is Vulcan Mission Control at T-minus 7 minutes.
Yeah, this would have been a stunning time. As we are waiting for the hopeful launch of the Vulcan rocket, we are, of course, getting a nice treat of a beautiful sunrise. And we do have an update from ULA President CEO Tory Bruno regarding the hold. He describes it as, and I'll quote him here, says, transient on a redundant data system, automated hold, checking it, and recycling. So a little bit of extra color there. Of course, we will continue to wait to see how ULA progresses and is able to get through this issue. Taking a look at this pre-produced video from ULA, this is the journey of their barge, the rocket ship, as it makes its way from Decatur, Alabama, down to Florida. The red dot on the map there on the far left side of the screen, of course, that is Decatur, just south of the Tennessee-Alabama state line, just a little bit to the east across the Tennessee River from Huntsville, Alabama, known as the Rocket City, home of the Marshall Space Flight Center, important NASA installation where a lot of engineering work is done and where they manage a good bit of the science that's conducted on board the International Space Station. Happens up at Marshall. It's also where Blue Origin has their engine manufacturing facility for the BE-4s and where they have space on a previously used historic test stand from NASA to test the BE-4 engines, which of course are used not only for the Vulcan rocket but also for Blue Origin's New Glenn. It's, of course, a time lapse from the rocket ship as it makes its way up here. Now we're entering into Decatur, or into Cape Canaveral. Taking a look here now at the path, presumably out to Vandenberg Space Force Base up in California. Quite a longer jaunt. One of the things that Tory Bruno mentioned during his pre-launch press conference regarding the Vulcan Cert 2 mission is, in addition to their upcoming additional vessel, which will be called the Spaceship, which will join the rocket ship, which you're seeing here being offloaded at Vandenberg. They're also exploring having an airship of some sort, which of course would allow for a much more direct path from Decatur and the Huntsville region of Alabama out to either the Cape or Vandenberg. Part of the infrastructure investment that ULA has made into its Vulcan rockets, both at the Cape and Vandenberg, that road and the wharf there, they've put in a good bit of money at that site. In total, they've invested about $1 billion or a little bit less than that into infrastructure improvements, both in Florida and in California, to support Vulcan rockets from East and West Coast launches. Taking a look at the wide shot here, it's a gorgeous sunrise that we're seeing here on Florida's Space Coast. Now 6:45 as the sun begins to ascend. Currently in a hold. The clock was reset to T minus 7 minutes. A new T0, though, has not been set. You're still listening into the loops, but not hearing anything in the last few minutes. Here's a new weather update from Arlena Moses. Let's listen in.
Develop here across the Gulf Stream, which is located about 20 miles offshore, but they continue to be low enough topped that we're not expecting any significant launch weather concerns. Though, as we continue to push into the window, they will approach the coast. Generally, when we get within 10 nautical miles, which is that white circle that we look at, we have to see them get a little colder topped. A little taller tops, usually about in the 15, maybe 20,000 foot range. And right now, they're kind of below that, so not continuing to be a launch weather concern. So if we go to our forecast, still looking pretty similar for what we were seeing earlier this morning. Overall probability of violations, very low, 5%. Continuing with our breezy easterly winds with temperatures in the low 80s and no significant launch weather concerns. Back to you, Andrea.
And good news on a weather front, at least, whenever this mission is ready to lift off. Sounds like weather will be cooperating. Again, it gets a little more tenuous the later they get in the window, which is unsurprising. Do have an update from ULA. They say the system recycle of the countdown has been completed. However, that update did not come with additional news of a new T0 time, so we're continuing to stand by for that. This camera perspective that we're seeing here is from the roof of NASA's Vehicle Assembly Building, or the VAB, here at the Kennedy Space Center.
Recommendation for you for R11 line item adjustment.
Proceed.
Okay, we want to take the following 8 line items from a value of 31.1 to 32. These line items are 188, 191, 194, 197, 207, 210, 213, 216.
Right, I copy line items 188, 191, 194, 197, 207, 210, 213, and 216. All those are currently set to a value of 31.1. The new value of 32 is the direction.
Affirmative.
RLM, LC?
RLM, go.
And did you copy the recommendation from the team?
Yes, I did, and ready to implement.
Roger, please put that in work and report when complete.
Copy. limits changed on 8 requested line items to upward from 31.1 to 32.0.
Roger.
Ready to provide you a recommendation?
LD net 1.
LD.
Proceed, AC.
Okay, the team has reviewed the hold that was put into place and isolated that to the VCU line items. We have adjusted the 8 line items affected by this voltage concern. We have no other concerns with proceeding and are recommending another attempt.
LC concurs. LD.
LD concurs.
And go ahead, LD.
LC, let's please coordinate and implement a new T0 of 11:25:00 Zulu.
Roger. RC, LC net 1.
RC, go ahead.
Please coordinate a new T0 of 11:25:00 Zulu.
Roger.
ALC, please set the countdown clock for a new T0 of 11:25:00 Zulu.
Roger, in work.
And as you just heard, we now finally have.
We're going to reestablish an L25 configuration and proceed again toward another terminal count run. PNE2, LC.
Good.
Initiate CUC airborne pre-chill.
Roger.
LC, RC.
Go.
The range has approved our new T0 of 11:25 Zulu.
Roger.
And LC, ALC, countdown clock has been set for new T0 of 11:25. We're currently at L25 and counting.
Roger. LOX 2, LC.
LOX 2.
Perform Centaur LO2 fill and drain valve cycle test.
Roger.
Fuel 2, LC.
Go ahead.
Perform Centaur LH2 fill and drain valve cycle test.
Roger.
Has gas. Establish scan patterns 62 and 63.
Roger.
This is Vulcan Mission Control.
And as you just heard, we are now targeting that new T0 coming up at 7:25 a.m. Eastern. That is 11:25 UTC. We're coming up in L minus 24 minutes, 8 seconds and counting.
Roger. Resume Centaur LO2 topping at flight level.
Roger.
This is Vulcan Mission.
We're currently L minus 20 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. We're currently still in the hold at T minus 7 minutes. However, with the new T0 that was announced of 7:25 a.m. Eastern, 11:25 UTC, that hold is set to be released at Again, L minus 7 minutes is when the countdown clock should sync up again with the terminal count. That is assuming that everything is ready to move forward again. This mission is dubbed Cert 2 because it is the second of 2 planned certification flights for the Vulcan rocket, ahead of being able to launch national security payloads for the U.S. Space Force and the National Reconnaissance Office. However, it is able to move forward at this point in trying to acquire new missions from NASA under the NLS, or NASA Launch Services 2 task order contract. We reached out to NASA's Launch Services program, which is based here at the Kennedy Space Center, and asked about the requirements for the Vulcan rocket to be able to launch missions for NASA, and asked if this second certification flight and the Space Force's certification is required for NASA missions, and got an answer from George Piquero, who is the Senior Technical Integration Manager for NASA LSP. He told us in a statement, and I'll quote him here, the requirements for proposing on NLS 2 task orders are to be on the contract and have 1 successful flight. Certification is not required to bid, but will be required by the time of the awarded mission's launch. So, bit of a split in necessities there. You do need to be certified in order to fly the mission, but not to be awarded the mission. So with the successful launch of the Cert 1 flight with Astrobotic's Peregrine lunar lander, that was the check mark needed for NASA in order for Vulcan to be bid for the NLS 2 task orders, potentially be awarded missions. However, this flight will be required in order for them to actually fly them. Certification of the rocket. Now currently L minus 16 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. Still within that T minus 7 minute hold as of right now. Standing by for the L minus and T minus clocks to resync up. As we're waiting, I want to thank the more than 6,100 of you who are hanging around with us in our live launch coverage. If you haven't already, we'd certainly appreciate it if you could hit that like button. Allow some more folks to find this coverage as ULA continues to work towards the planned launch of Vulcan, now again at 7:25 a.m. Eastern, 11:25 UTC. I want to thank a few more folks for their support. Thanks to Christopher Sean for a €10 super chat. Appreciate that, Christopher. Thanks to Michael McRoy for a $5 super chat, one of our wonderful channel members. Says, all right, let's add another rocket to the worldwide fleet. Michael then also went on to gift a Spaceflight Now membership. Appreciate that, Michael. And to our newest channel member, welcome aboard. Glad to have you with us. A welcome as well to John Lee Man 60 and INDN Star for joining us, the channel membership, both pad leader levels. Welcome aboard to you both. Mel with a $5 super chat, wishing happy hello to her best pal Freddie, watching from Holland. Hello to you, Freddie. And thanks to RV Weekends for a $5 super chat, saying thank you for always providing an excellent live stream. And kudos to the moderators joining us from Mims, Florida, just north of Titusville.
Preferred cycle test complete.
Roger.
One potential benefit of the launch slipping further into the window today is, unlike the CERT 1 mission, this will give us an opportunity to see
minus 13 minutes.
Vulcan.
Flight control, perform launch on time verification.
Roger.
OSM, place SRB ignition SNA switch in the enable position.
SRB ignition enabled.
Verify the FCO, ROC, and OSM hold fire switches are in the proceed position.
Ready to proceed.
RC, verify solar radiation acceptable for launch.
Verified.
PNE-1, verify post liftoff launch head umbilical purges configured for launch.
Verified.
Launch on time verified.
Roger.
Taking a live look there again in the ASOC, the Advanced Spaceflight Operations Center, about 4 miles away from Slick 40.
To launch constraint, anytime after the terminal count status check, the observer shall announce hold, hold, hold on channel 1, identify their station, and briefly state the reason for the hold. RLM, verify red line monitor and event table in the correct configuration for terminal count.
Verified.
LC LOX 2.
Go.
Centaur LO2 at flight level.
Roger.
LC Fuel 2.
Go.
Centaur LH2 at flight level.
Roger. LC switch is ready. All steps are complete prior to the status check.
Out minus 11 minutes.
We remain in the hold as we continue towards liftoff. In a few moments, launch conductor Dylan Rice will pull the launch team for the final go to pick up the count. 29 engineers and managers are pulled for system status and readiness to proceed. This is the final status check for all Vulcan vehicle systems, ground systems, and the U.S. Space Force Eastern Range. The vehicle system readiness pull includes electrical systems, hydraulics, pneumatics, propulsion systems, flight control, and propellants. Let's listen in as Dylan Rice performs the final pulling.
Status check to proceed with terminal count, Vulcan systems, propulsion.
Go.
Hydraulics.
Go.
Pneumatics.
Go.
LNG.
Go.
LO2.
Go.
Water.
Go.
Centaur systems, propulsion.
Go.
Pneumatics.
Go.
LO2.
Go.
LH2.
Go.
HASGAS.
Go.
Electrical systems, airborne.
Go.
Ground.
Go.
Facility.
Go.
RFFTS.
Go.
Flight control.
Go.
CCQ.
Go.
Op support.
Go.
COM.
Go.
Umbilicals.
Go.
ECS.
Go.
Redline monitor.
Go.
Quality.
Go.
Op safety manager.
Go.
ULA safety officer.
Go.
Vehicle system engineer.
Go.
Anomaly chief.
Go.
Range coordinator.
Go.
Launch director.
You have permission to launch.
Proceeding with the count. ALC, verify T0 is set for 112500 Zulu.
Verified.
ABE, issue MRTU sync pulse.
Roger.
Secure transmitter battery heater and transfer battery internal.
Polling is complete and the team is go for launch. From T-minus 7 minutes until liftoff, you'll hear Dylan Rice and the team performing the final.
Once again, we are about to step into the terminal count for the Vulcan Cert 2 mission. It's the point at which the T-minus clock and the L-minus clock will line up in sync with one another. Then we will step into the final 7 minutes of the countdown. For those who may not have been with us, the last go-round we had this, we got down to 1 minute and 51 seconds when an issue cropped up. The hold was called and they recycled, worked through whatever came up. They didn't really provide much information outwardly on that, but they are now in a good position to proceed with the terminal count, and we're looking forward to picking up the terminal count in 5 seconds.
3, 2, 1, mark.
Five. Ground pyros enabled.
The countdown clock now picked up again. We are just about 6.5 minutes away from liftoff of Vulcan on its first daytime flight in the early morning hours here on Florida's Space Coast. Later in 2025, we'll start to see Vulcan rockets be able to be launched from Slick 3 over at Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. Currently, teams are working to finish converting that pad from an Atlas configuration to a Vulcan-only launch pad.
This is Vulcan Mission Control.
Five minutes to lift off.
LO2.
At this point, ULA is working on topping off the LNG and the liquid oxygen for the Vulcan first stage. First stage powered by a combination of liquefied natural gas or methane and LOX. Beautiful sunrise there. You can see the sun starting to peek through the clouds just to the right of the vertical integration facility, or the VIF.
410.
Foliage conditioning complete.
$330.
Hydraulics at pre-launch.
Now less than 3.5 minutes to go. The Vulcan first stage has pressurized to flight levels. The vent valves for the methane and LOX tanks have been closed. We are now less than 3 minutes to the planned liftoff of Vulcan on its second flight for ULA.
249.
FTS internal.
$238. $230.
Kilo 2 POP started.
T-minus 2 minutes. The launch
59.
vehicle...
$135.
FTS orange.
We're now less than a minute and a half away from launch. We are past the
120.
point where the last hold was called.
SCS count started. 115.
ECS, reduce ECS for launch.
Roger.
T-minus
1
1
minute.
minute.
Rock, report range status.
Range green.
Forty-five
45.
seconds.
Vulcan tanks at step 3.
$30.
BE4 start box go.
28.
Verify ECS reduced for launch.
Verified.
Status check.
Go Vulcan.
Go Centaur.
Go Cert 2.
Here we go. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, BE4 ignition, 2, 1, and liftoff of Vulcan Cert 2. For the second time and for the first time under the light of the rising sun, Vulcan has lifted off from Slick 41 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station.
Body rates continue to look nominal, trending towards 0.
Standing by for SRB jettison. According to the timeline, it should have happened by now.
BE4 is now throttling down. And we
There
have
go the
SRB jettison.
separation of those SRBs a little bit later than according to the planned timeline.
Vulcan is 19 miles in altitude.
We just heard confirmation of solid rock.
Still tracking the progress of the Vulcan rocket there. You can see the blue glow from the liquefied natural gas, the methane. Next step we're anticipating here on the timeline is booster engine cutoff just before the 5-minute mark into flight. Excellent work from our tracking team this morning.
Miles per hour. Continue to have 2 good engines. Body rates trending towards 0. And we're now about 1 minute to nominal eco. Vulcan is now 1/4 of its liftoff weight. And Vulcan is now passing the Kármán line.
With Vulcan now in space, we're about 30 seconds away from booster engine cutoff, or BECO.
And we've started boost phase chill down on the 2nd stage engine. And the BE4s are throttling to maintain a constant acceleration. And we've concluded our boost phase chill down. And PU has gone to open loop. And we have BECO, booster engine cutoff. And we have Vulcan Centaur separation. And pre-start on LH2 and LO2. And we have full thrust on the RL-10. And bearing jettison has been indicated. And we've begun thermal loop conditioning on the RCS. And fixed angles on Centaur PU. Vehicle is now 123 miles in altitude, 345 miles downrange, and traveling at 10,000 miles per hour. And we're getting indications that booster performance was within expectations. RL-10 continues to perform nominally. And we are partway through a 10.5-minute burn.
This is Vulcan Mission Control at T+. So much for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Andrea.
I think we're all really excited that we just saw Vulcan launch for the 2nd time. I know a lot is going on with us this morning, but why don't you tell me what's going through your head right now?
Sure. So I think it was a beautiful liftoff this morning. I think we're all really excited to see that. It's such a significant launch in terms of our certification and where we're going with Vulcan. So it was just a tremendous accomplishment from this team. Really proud to be part of the team that did this. Not just the ULA team, but also our Space Force partners, our suppliers across the country. So many people put in so much hard work, so much effort, so much dedication into this, and it's an amazing thing to see this morning.
You never think about it, but there's so many different parts that go into a successful, even just getting off the pad.
Absolutely,
launch. Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the countdown?
Sure. So it was a fairly quiet count to begin with. The team did have to work through a couple of items kind of at the end, which is why we have a window that we worked into. So the team is very experienced. The launch ops team here, the engineering team in Denver, very experienced and really able to, they have a good understanding of the vehicle systems, the ground systems, and we're able to kind of disposition those items and move forward. And we worked a little bit into that window and then got a nice sunrise launch. So
it was really
pretty.
Beautiful. I didn't hate seeing the sunrise. No. Not at all.
That was nice.
So we've talked a lot during the broadcast about how this is really important for certification, this launch today, and our government customers. Why don't
And we'll continue listening on the background for updated information about the interview that's happening here as we're continuing to track the progress on the Centaur 5 upper stage. It was performing a roll maneuver to connect correctly with the TDRS satellites, allowing for communication to continue. Hear the call for good burn of the RL-10 on the upper stage. Now L plus 10 minutes, 7 seconds into flight. The next milestone that we're looking for here is Centaur first main engine cutoff, or MECO 1. It's coming up at T plus 15 minutes, 55.7 seconds, or thereabouts.
Everything continues to perform nominally. The vehicle is now traveling at 14,500 miles per hour.
That point of MECO is coming up in now just less than 2 minutes, as you heard. Set for about T plus 15 minutes, 55.7 seconds. Following a coast phase, there will be a second burn of the RL-10 engines on the Centaur 5 upper stage. That burn set to begin at T plus 30 minutes, 53.6 seconds, lasting about 4 minutes in duration, which will bring this mission to its conclusion. As we are waiting that point of MECO.
And we're now approaching approximately 1 minute to nominal MECO. Everything continues to look good. RL-10 engine parameters are as expected. MPU is correcting as expected.
As you just heard. I want to thank a couple folks for your support this morning. Our thanks to SG for a $2 super chat and a very happy dancing corgi emoji. Psychonaut69, thanks for gifting a Spaceflight Now membership. Our appreciation to Letitia Conan for a $5 super chat, saying, "Wish I could give more." Well, Letitia, you know, any and all support is all very welcome.
And MPU has come off its lock stop.
This is Vulcan mission control at T plus 15 minutes.
MECO 1 is coming up in just a few seconds.
Now orbital. MPU has gone to open loop. Coming up on MECO. And we have MECO, main engine cutoff 1.
Good call there from ULA. Now T plus 16 minutes, 26 seconds and counting. Again, we're in a coast phase for about the next 15 minutes. The upper stage FTS or flight termination system has been disabled. At this point, it is no longer needed in flight. Now, L plus or T plus 21 minutes 54 seconds and counting. We were just talking behind the scenes about the ascent of the Vulcan rocket on the CERT-2 mission. It appears there was some kind of anomaly that happened with from the Cape side, the right-facing SRB, the solid rocket booster from Northrop Grumman. Going to bring that video to you in just a minute or two here. We're just working on getting this clip ready. And again, ULA is going to go back through with a fine-tooth comb on everything with this mission, but it does look like, from a very rudimentary review of that video, as though part or most of the engine nozzle may pop off, and we'll show you that part of the video as we're getting it ready. But as you see the plume of the right SRB start to expand, there's a moment at about T plus 37-ish, 39 seconds into the video where you see it expand, and there's this brief pop in size, and you can see it come down on the right-hand side of the video. We're just getting that ready for you. As soon as it is, we'll be sure to bring that to you. Stand by. Currently about 7 minutes left until the reignition of the Centaur upper stage engines, as far as the timeline of things.
Welcome back. Thank you for following mission progress of ULA.
Now, L plus 26 minutes, 26 seconds and counting. We're coming upon the ignition of the upper stage engine. Want to bring in the video that I was alluding to. This is within the first minute of flight before the SRB jettison. This is a video that's on a loop, so you'll see it cycle back a couple of times continuously. Wait for it to cycle back. You see here that pop, and then on the right-hand side, as you follow the plume, just on the right-hand side of the vehicle, you can see a small, almost circular object fall away right there. Look for it on the right. It's following just to the bottom of your screen. And when it does, you can see the rocket start to lean to the right a little bit. One more time. Here we go. See the fall just to the right, and the rocket starts to lean. However, ULA was able to get through this stage of flight, jettison the SRBs. That came about 20 or so seconds, or a little bit later than was nominally projected according to the flight profile from ULA. Also noticed that the Centaur main engine cutoff came about 20 or so seconds after what was described on the flight profile timeline. So an indication that there may have been some additional compensation here from an off-nominal performance from that solid rocket booster. As a reminder, this was not a customer mission. This is an entirely ULA flight with an inert payload on board, meaning that it will remain affixed to the Centaur 5 upper stage. The goal of this mission is to gather as much data as possible about the performance of the Centaur 5 as they look to expand its capabilities in future missions and its ability to last in duration. Taking a look back at this video again. Shot buyer Adam Bernstein here from the press site. This is the vantage point of the Kennedy Space Center. As you can see, the Vulcan start to lean to the right following that pop. This video slowed down by about 50% of real-time speed. OT plus 29 minutes, 53 seconds and counting. Coming up on the Centaur second main engine starter, MES-2. Now less than a minute away as we're looking back on the earliest stage in flight when there, by visual accounts, right there appears to be a pretty notable anomaly with the solid rocket booster on the right-hand side of the rocket from this vantage point. If you go back in our broadcast or look at some of the video that we published, you can see that's the SRB that's on the same side as the ULA logo and the American flag on the Centaur, or just beneath the Centaur upper stage on the inner stage adapter. So it's on that side of the rocket, just to give you a sense of which SRB we're talking about.
Ignition and full thrust on the RL-10.
This is Vulcan.
And we've got a good confirmation of the ignition of the RL-10 engines on the Centaur upper stage. This burn set to last 4 minutes in duration. Oh, that's weird.
Look good in this burn. Engine parameters are as expected. PU is correcting as anticipated, and our body rates are trending towards 0. Approximately 1 minute to MECO. Approximately 30 seconds to MECO. And we have MECO, main engine cut off 2. We're now venting the fuel tank. We have approximately 2 minutes and 49 seconds until simulated spacecraft separation. We have full settling on RCS, and the vehicle is now rolling to its simulated SV SEP attitude. And RCS is now doing 50% settling and thruster warming. Body rates are trending towards 0 now. Coming up on our simulated spacecraft separation. Vehicle is now rolling, and we are depressurizing the LH2 tank. And we have simulated spacecraft separation. We now have an approximately 28-minute coast until the third burn. And vehicle has started its descent and is now pointing towards Dedris. Passing 40 minutes into flight, Centaur continues to look good throughout this coast period. All parameters are looking nominal. RCS is performing its periodic firing. And our body rates are trending towards 0.
This is Vulcan Mission Control at T+.
Let's listen in to comments from Tori Bruno here.
With me today.
My pleasure.
I've worked on this program for a really long time. I am very excited to see the beautiful launch. I feel like we waited for the perfect moment to lift off. So I just want to say congratulations. It's just an incredible day.
Well, thank you, and you too.
Thank you. And thank you so much for being here. It's my understanding you want to tell us a little bit about today's flight?
Yeah, so the trajectory was nominal throughout. We came to our first insertion on the orbit that we intended, so all of that is good. We did, however, have an observation on SRB number 1, and so we will be off looking into that after the mission is complete. Other than that, the flight was nominal.
And you know, that's the great thing about these certification flights is it allows us to get more information as we get into our regular launch cadence, but you know, just a testament to Centaur and Booster on how beautiful that launch was so far.
It was a gorgeous liftoff, absolutely.
Great. So as we continue on with this launch, after the launch, we'll go through, look at the data and just make sure that we're certified for, you know, national security space missions. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what that certification means for ULA and the launch industry as a whole?
Yeah, certainly. Well, for ULA, we designed this rocket for the National Security Mission Space. In completing the second certification flight successfully allows us to begin those missions that are urgent and important to the country. What it means overall for the industry is that we've introduced a new launch vehicle and a vehicle that is capable of launching at a pretty high tempo, and so we have broadened the entire country's capability for lift, and you will begin to see that launch tempo really tick up, especially next year.
I'm really looking forward to that. Who doesn't like a rocket launch?
Well, no one as far as I know.
I know, those people would be crazy. So I do want to say how hard it's been the past couple of years. Everybody has worked to get to this moment. I mean, this is kind of a pinnacle for us in terms of overall Vulcan development. Do you have anything to say to all of the folks that have worked on Vulcan over the years?
Absolutely. I just want to express my appreciation. Developing a new rocket is a monumental task. It is one of the pinnacles of engineering accomplishment. It truly is rocket science. Yes. Our team has worked so very hard over the last several years to design this rocket, to build it, to test it, to overcome the many technical challenges that are inherent to that. I could not be more proud of our team. Thank you all.
Thank you, seriously. This has been just so incredible to be a part of this team, and I don't think that there's anything I've been as proud of, besides my children, of course, to this moment. So now that we've launched, hopefully we'll get certification under our belts here shortly. What's next for Vulcan?
Well, we have a pair of national security missions in the pipeline. So we'll do those, and then we'll roll into next year with a whole number of flights.
Great. It's going to be an exciting year next year for sure.
Yes, it will.
Well, Tori, I know you have to get back, but thank you so much for joining us today. I am very excited about today's launch, and I always appreciate your time.
Oh, you bet. Thank you. You're doing a great job today.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. At this time, we'll end our live coverage. For more information about the Vulcan rocket, please visit ulalaunch.com. I'm Andrea Linhoff. Thank you for joining us on this exciting...
This is a replay of the launch put together by United Launch Alliance. The booster closest to the camera is what appeared to have an issue during the ascent.
Performing as expected. All temperature.
With the wrap up of ULA's broadcast, we're also going to bring our live coverage to a close in just a minute here. Just want to take another look at our live chat, make sure we haven't missed anything. Do want to thank a couple more folks. Thanks to channel member Rick Donner for gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships. Certainly appreciate that. And to our 5 newest channel members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. Be sure to thank Rick in the live chat if you haven't already. Our thanks as well to Tony McCoy for a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you, Tony, who says, Spaceflight Now is the best channel for all things space. To Will and the greatest mods. Thanks for hanging out with all of us space nuts. LOL. Coffee is on me. Well, thank you, Tony. I personally am not the coffee drinker in their group, but I know Adam enjoys a good cup of Joe. Stephen and I tend to be more of tea drinkers, although I've got a Celsius beside me here, giving me a little bit of that caffeine hit to make sure we're still rocking this morning. So thank you for that. Want to turn now to our mission stats as they currently stand now with a launch and orbit of the Centaur upper stage. They said that they simulated a payload deployment. Obviously, this was an inert payload, so nothing actually separated from the Centaur 5 upper stage. They also alluded to a third burn that was coming up, likely the final disposal burn, now that all of the mission objectives were achieved for the Centaur. At least they certainly appeared to be. With this mission now in the books, this marked the second launch of a Vulcan rocket this year. This was also the second Vulcan to launch to date. This was ULA's 5th launch of 2024. This was the 111th orbital launch from a U.S. rocket company. The 87th for ULA from Slick 41, and the 113th overall from this particular pad. Some broader stats, this was the 67th launch from Florida so far this year, the 101st from U.S. soil. Again, the 111th from a U.S. rocket company, and the 182nd orbital launches from around the world. There have been 6 launch failures, so here's where our pie chart now stands. The U.S. holding on to 61% of the pie. China, with its 46 launches so far, has a solid quarter. Russia in the 3rd spot with 6% in its 11 missions. Japan has launched 5 times so far this year. India has launched 3 times. I believe that's a typo. Iran has also launched 3 times. North Korea has launched once, and the European Space Agency has launched twice. And as we look back at an empty pad there at Slick 41, just looking to an eye on the future, of course, we are awaiting the approval for the Falcon 9 to resume flights. The Falcon family's got some important missions coming up for both the European Space Agency and NASA. First up to bat is the Hera mission, going back to the binary asteroid system of Didymos and Dimorphos, the sequel, if you will, to NASA's Double Asteroid Redirection Test, or DART mission, which collided as anticipated and as designed with Dimorphos back in 2022. This mission is a follow-up to study that binary asteroid system, learn more about its composition, and get an up-close look at the impacts of this planetary defense mission. That'll be followed by a Falcon Heavy launch from Launch Complex 39A, a mission designed to head out to the ocean moon of Europa, orbiting Jupiter. Nominally, these missions are set to launch on Monday the 7th and then on the 10th. However, that is, of course, pending FAA approval and the completion of an investigation into an upper stage anomaly that happened during the Crew 9 mission to the International Space Station. NASA astronaut Nick Hague, Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov both safely made it to the International Space Station. However, during the deorbit burn, that was phenomenal. And while it splashed down safely in the Atlantic Ocean, the upper stage that is, it was slightly off from where it was supposed to, and so they have been looking into that issue ever since the launch happened back on Saturday the 28th was when liftoff happened from Space Launch Complex 40. So keep your eyes and ears open. We'll have more as that develops, and we look towards the launch of those two key missions for the European Space Agency and for NASA coming up as soon as next week. But both have planetary launch windows that end for Hera on the 27th, for the Europa Clipper mission on November 6th. So there is time, but not copious amounts of it. So be sure to stay up to date with the very latest on spaceflightnow.com. If you're not already subscribed to the channel here on YouTube, now's a good time to do that. Be sure to hit the bell icon, turn on all notifications so you're alerted whenever we start our live launch broadcasts. And we'll look forward to joining with you on those missions. Want to thank the team behind the launch coverage today. First off, want to thank our moderators, Callistia Lee and Aussie Space Girl, for helping support us on the live chat here. Big thanks to our channel member community here on YouTube. Want to thank our friends P. Carsons with Max Q Productions and Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images. Our thanks to Adam Bernstein. Got some great tracking footage of the Vulcan rocket as it made its ascent. Our thanks as well to Stephen Young, our editor of Spaceflight Now, who is running the technical side of the broadcast. Most importantly, thanks to you for wherever you're watching from around the world. We know there are a lot of ways to watch live launch broadcasts, and we certainly appreciate you being with Spaceflight Now. So for all of us here at the team, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others. We will see you next time, folks, and until then, bye-bye.